One, 2, 1, 2. Once again, we're going to be bringing it to you live from the HSN secret base that is just my house. Okay. You see, we got to do it all one take because our laptopy over there is being a bit of a dickhole lately. So, this is how it's going to have to be. This is Spud here from HitsThatNow.com coming at you with another quick hit. All over the internet at the moment, I'm reading about Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is everywhere. Winter is coming. The dragons is shit. Game of Thrones. Everywhere is telling me how Game of Thrones is making fantasy cool again. With little air quotes and shit. You know, and I can't help but think about how wrong that is. When did fantasy stop being cool? You know, like, did I miss the fucking memo on that one? When the hell did it stop being cool? It kind of always had a following. It's always been what it is. It wasn't a case of Dungeons and Dragons type shit was huge. Nothing. 2014. That's not really how it went. It's always been there. It just hasn't necessarily been on TV the way Game of Thrones is. Like, look just a handful of years ago when Skyrim came out. Look at how fucking big Skyrim was. It sold fucking millions. Everybody had a copy of Skyrim. Everybody. You look at the video and they go, oh, I don't have a copy of Skyrim there, Mr. Spud. Check your video game collection. I fucking bet you a tenner you do. You know, I bet if I moved through mine I'd find a copy of Skyrim. Everybody's got a copy of it. It was huge. People took an hour on the knee for God's sake. You know, and what was Skyrim about? It was about dragons. It was about big old swords and big old shields. It was about fucking knights and shit. You know, it was fantasy. You know, if you want to go even kind of more RPG about it, at least more discussion wheel about it. You know, Dragon Age. What was that? It was Mass Effect in a fantasy fucking setting. You know, again, all dragons and shit, all big swords, big shields, big guys, you know, proper fantasy setting, like, you know. These games have been going forever. These games have always been there, and they've always been selling absolutely huge amounts. You know, fantasy didn't fall off the face of the earth. It's still been there. God of War. God of War is a classic example of fantasy. You know, sure, it's slightly different. It's back in, like, ancient Greece and, you know, Kratos wears a skirt. But, it's fantasy. It's got everything you might need to make it fantasy. You've got, what, cheesy narration, you've got titties, and you've got swords. That sounds like fantasy to me. In the fourth level, in the fourth game, you take this huge Hydra attacking the ship. Massive fucking thing. You know, they'd fight trolls and orcs and things that you wouldn't get away with if it wasn't a fantasy setting. You know, this is what it's all about. It always has been. The latest Soul Calibur is a couple of years old now at this stage. I think it might have been about 2011, maybe 2012. You know, but it would have been the 5th, I believe, Soul Calibur game. Soul Calibur's been going since the mid-90s, back when it was Soul Blade, Soul Edge, depending on what part of the planet you're on. You know, and it's a 3D fighter that's unashamedly fantasy. You know, it's almost piss-takingly fantasy, if you will. Huge big fucking voiceovers, orchestral scores, fucking cheesy ass swords and shields shit as everybody fights to get their hand on this fucking legendary sword. You know, it sounds like a Hammerfall record come to life. You know, it's outrageously cheesy and it loves it. But it's always been there and it's always been played. It's still being played today. It's still a tournament game. Personally, I don't understand it. I'm not too into it, but that's fair enough. You know, Prince of Persia made a huge splash there about 10 years ago when it came back out of absolutely nowhere. You know, and told this cool fantasy tale about one man who fucked up his entire kingdom and was searching for redemption. And they were, throwing a bit of a rewindy jobby there and some sand monsters. And away you go, you got a Persian fantasy. Devil May Cry, I'd even go as far as saying it's fantasy. Yes, it's new wave fucking gothic fantasy. It all looks like it. It all looks like it should be kicked off a Kerrang channel. But it's still fantasy. It's a guy who fights demons. His father was a demon. He's half demon. He goes around with a pair of dual pistols and a big old sword, chopping up guys like 10 times the size of them. This is all it's all formed into the same genre. It's always been there. Of course, the Lord of the Rings games as well, worth a mention. But it's always been there. It's always been just as big as it is now. Game of Thrones isn't bringing this back. It never left. It's always been there. And chances are it always will be there. Whether you're playing fucking Golden Axe or Onimusha, it's always there. Fantasy is a huge part of gaming. And it always will be. So, this whole Game of Thrones and making fantasy cool again, I completely disagree. I personally think it's always been cool. It just hasn't been on TV. It's been through video games, it's been through literature, it's been through comic books, it's been through movies. Just not necessarily on your telly. And if you're ignoring it just because it's not on TV, well then you're missing out and you're probably just closed-minded. So sort yourself out and pick up a joypad. Check out some of these games. Have a go with Skyrim. Lose hours and hours in Skyrim. And then you know what? When you think you've had enough and you just can't take it anymore, fucking mod Skyrim, Son of the Dragons, and Macho Man Randy Savage. This is Spud from hits.net.com, signing off. Good luck.